Chosen one, you were destined to hear these words. Heaven orchestrated this encounter with divine perfection because God is speaking directly to your heart. There is someone heavy on your mind, a name, a vision. It appeared the moment you saw the title. That's not illusion. That's not randomness. That's the murmur of the Holy Spirit. A warning, a stirring, a transition. Don't scroll aside. Don't silence the whisper. What you choose in this moment matters more than you could ever imagine. God is calling you into complete awareness, not just in emotion, but in spirit. Because what's at stake isn't simply a friendship or a heartbreak or a season of confusion. What's at stake is your assignment, your alignment, your next journey, your destiny. The steps of a faithful one are directed by the Lord. Psalm 37 verse 23. And these steps have brought you here for a reason. This word is not about romance or personal hardship. It's not only about pain or doubt. It's about purpose. You are standing at the threshold of a divine choice, and heaven is watching to see how you will act. And do not doubt this. The enemy has been pressing hard because he knows what's about to unfold if you remain steadfast. He knows what happens when you stop questioning your calling, when you stop feeding illusions, when you start walking in full surrender. That's why this word has reached you, because God wants your vision clear. He wants your spirit ignited. He wants you to perceive what's truly happening behind the curtain of this trial. Be vigilant and steady, for your adversary, the devil, prowls like a roaring lion seeking someone to consume. 1 Peter 5 verse 8. But you, chosen one, are not unguarded. If this message already speaks to your soul, subscribe, like this video, and comment 77 below. You are shielded. You are being equipped. And this very hour is your caution and your awakening. So don't just listen. Engage, lean close. Stay until the end, because we will pray together. And that prayer will not be ordinary. It will destroy chains. It will release insight. It will synchronize your spirit with God's perfect will. Number 1. The furnace of silence. They thought silence was your defeat, but silence was the furnace where heaven forged your endurance. Every night you cried in secret was not wasted. It was fire gathering in places they could not see. Malachi 3 verse 2 says, For he is like a refiner's fire and like fuller's soap. And that is what your hidden years became, a holy refining no enemy could interrupt. While they laughed at your absence, heaven was writing your resilience in fire. They mocked the seasons when you seemed forgotten, but silence was your consecration, a training ground only chosen ones endure. Every unanswered prayer became oil. Every overlooked moment became a weapon of sight. Comment, I seal this word in light. If you know silence was never your weakness, but the place where heaven clothed you in flame. And stay close, because what silence birthed is about to terrify shadows. There are moments in life when the silence feels almost alive, as if it is speaking without words. Imagine standing in a quiet room where the air itself seems to hum with memory, where even your own heartbeat sounds like an echo from somewhere older than you. That silence was not emptiness. It was presence, a furnace hidden behind ordinary days, burning without smoke. You felt it in dreams you could not explain, in the weight of questions that lingered after you woke, in the whisper that asked if maybe you were meant for something more. These moments were not accidents. They were glimpses of a story already unfolding. Every season where silence pressed down on you was not abandonment, it was instruction. It was heaven's way of pulling you aside, away from noise, so you could learn to hear what others never could. Perhaps you remember those nights when confusion clouded your mind and you wondered why life seemed to keep you apart. You saw others fitting in with ease, while you carried an invisible weight that set you at a distance. At times you questioned if you were broken, too sensitive, or simply misplaced. But that very difference was the mark of your calling. the quiet shaping of someone set apart. The tears you cried alone were not evidence of weakness, but proof that your heart was tuned to frequencies too subtle for the crowd. The longing you carried for meaning, for truth, for connection beyond the shallow, was not a flaw but a signpost pointing toward your deeper identity. What others dismissed as oversensitivity was actually your spirit responding to realities they had no eyes to see. And though you didn't yet know it, that ache was heaven's fingerprint on your soul. It was never random, not a chain of accidents without design. Behind every delay, behind every door that closed when you thought it should open, there was an unseen architecture guiding your path. Scripture reveals in Isaiah 48 verse 10, "See, I have refined you, though not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction." Your pain was not punishment, it was refinement. The silence that stretched through your seasons was not neglect, but holy preparation. The struggles you endured in secret were chiseling away illusions and teaching you to stand on what was eternal. Where you thought you were forgotten, heaven was laying a foundation, a hidden design that only becomes clear when the light finally falls upon it. And slowly, small signs began to surface. A dream that carried symbols too vivid to dismiss. A déjà vu that left you with the undeniable sense you had walked this path before. A sudden knowing that arrived before logic could explain it. Perhaps you felt the shift in the air when you entered a room, or a stirring in your body when lies were spoken near you. These subtle signs were not tricks of the mind. They were confirmations, the language of the spirit breaking through. You weren't just surviving quiet years. You were being trained to read reality in codes, to see through shadows, to hear whispers most people never notice. The silence was not emptiness, it was a classroom, and the lessons were written in patterns and moments that only your spirit could decode. Deep down, you always knew your intuition wasn't lying to you. You felt things others denied, and for years you doubted yourself because of their disbelief. But your discernment was the quiet compass that kept pulling you forward, even when you couldn't explain why. That gut feeling that told you when someone's smile hid deception. That stillness that confirmed you were safe in certain places and warned you away from others. It was not imagination. It was confirmation, steady and unshaken, waiting for you to finally trust it fully. In silence, the truth revealed itself not through thunder, but through recognition. And what once felt like guesswork began to unfold as alignment. You were not broken. Chosen one, you were calibrated. And now awareness deepens. You begin to understand that awakening is not about becoming someone new, but remembering who you always were. Beneath the surface of every rejection, every lonely night, every unanswered prayer, there was a deeper identity waiting to be revealed. The silence stripped away the masks the world tried to force upon you, peeling back the illusions until you could finally glimpse the archetypal truth of yourself. Like a scroll sealed for generations, your true self was hidden, waiting for the appointed hour of remembrance. What seemed buried was not lost, it was preserved, kept safe by silence until the time came when you could carry its weight. This is the beginning of your first activation, the moment where you stop doubting your own fire and start owning the truth of what silence gave you. Every rejection became training. Every delay became refinement. Every unanswered prayer became oil for your lamp. You are not fragile. You are forged. You are not forgotten. You are preserved. Your sensitivity is not a flaw, but a sword. Your endurance not weakness, but weaponry. The fire they thought would consume you was the very furnace that birthed your strength. Chosen one, this is the hour when you embrace that what made you different was never a curse. It was the crown being formed in silence. And now, let this word settle like fire in your bones. Your arrival here was not coincidence. You didn't stumble onto this message. You were guided, drawn, aligned. Every season of silence, every hidden tear, every night of wondering has brought you to this moment of recognition. You were not silenced to be destroyed. You were silenced to be refined into flame. Comment, I carry this silence as crown. If you know deep in your spirit that silence was never your end, but the beginning of your awakening, because what comes next is no longer about silence. It is about the eruption of fire that silence prepared in you. And chosen one, when that fire rises, shadows will tremble. Number 2, the shadows that trembled. They never hated you for what you did. They hated you for what you carried. Even in your silence, darkness felt your fire rising, and it trembled. John 1 verse 5 declares, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." Every slander, every exclusion, every whispered betrayal was not proof of weakness, but confirmation of your fire. Your presence alone disrupted deception, exposing what words could never catch. They feared you not because of your actions, but because their masks cracked when you walked in the room. Their unease was their confession, their rejection was their recognition, and their attacks were proof that shadows cannot coexist with your flame. Comment, I walk crowned by eternal flame. If you've ever felt the atmosphere shift the moment you entered, because that was your fire confronting what darkness tried to hide. And what comes next is not silence anymore, it is ignition. It often begins as something small, almost unnoticeable, like a heaviness in the air that others do not acknowledge. You enter a room and sense the atmosphere shift. Though no one speaks of it, conversations change when you arrive, laughter falters, and eyes suddenly glance away as if hiding something. This is not imagination, but perception, the silent awareness that something unseen reacts to your presence. Long before you understood who you were, shadows already felt the weight of your fire. What seemed like awkwardness was actually spiritual recognition, darkness trembling at what you carried unknowingly. They never opposed you because of your mistakes, but because of your light. The pressure this created was not only external, but deeply emotional, carving itself into your heart with the sharp edges of isolation. You felt the sting of being misunderstood, labeled as too intense, too quiet, or too different. Friends turned into strangers without explanation. Doors closed after promises were made, and your heart carried the bruise of constant rejection. Shame whispered that something was wrong with you, that you were unworthy of belonging. Self-doubt became a companion, echoing every harsh word spoken over you. Yet even in these storms of rejection, something within you refused to fully collapse. The pain was real, but so was the unseen fire being fanned within your silence. What you faced was not random hostility. It was targeted resistance designed to suppress a destiny too powerful to leave unchecked. Just as Israel wandered through the wilderness before entering promise, your own journey was shaped by battles meant to refine, not destroy. These hidden structures of opposition were ancient, orchestrated to discourage those carrying prophetic light. Systems, cycles, and people became instruments, consciously or unconsciously, pressing against your spirit. But Exodus 14 verse 14 declares, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still," reminding you that even in exile, purpose is preserved. What looked like endless delay was sacred warfare fought in silence. And every trial you endured became evidence that heaven had marked you for something greater. Looking back, patterns emerge like constellations once hidden by night. The betrayals were not random. They came at pivotal moments when your spirit was about to rise. Opportunities slipped through your hands just as breakthrough seemed near, leaving you disoriented but strangely sharpened. People who promised loyalty turned cold, and environments that once felt safe drained the life from you. At the time, it felt cruel and confusing, but hindsight reveals a strange design. These repeated storms were not coincidences. They were confirmations of what you carried. Each obstacle was a flare of resistance against the light you bore, proof that darkness recognized you before you even recognized yourself. And the recognition of these patterns is the first step toward reclaiming your power. There is a truth many avoid, but chosen ones cannot ignore. Light attracts resistance because it unmasks what hides in shadows. You felt it in the heaviness of certain rooms, the sudden hostility of people who knew nothing about you, the inexplicable weight pressing on your chest at night. This was not paranoia, but the collision of spiritual realities. Distortion clings to brilliance, hoping to dim it before it rises. Ephesians 6 verse 12 tells us, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world." Your battles were never simply with people, but with the unseen forces that feared your unveiling. And still, even when fog pressed thick around you, your flame never extinguished. In the face of such resistance, your inner world was tested in ways no one else could see. There were days you felt tempted to shrink, to please, to silence yourself so the attacks would stop. Other times, rebellion stirred in you, not out of hatred, but from the desperate need to protect your essence. You questioned if it was safer to bury your voice, to hide your gift, to play small. Fear whispered that standing out would always bring pain. That exposure only meant more betrayal. But even in those moments, a part of you refused to surrender fully. That refusal, even if fragile, was proof that heaven's mark was greater than the wounds inflicted upon you. And here is where the shift begins. When you realize resistance was not condemnation but confirmation. They did not target you because you were weak, but because you were dangerous to deception. Your silence terrified them because it saw too much. Your presence unsettled them because it revealed too much. What was meant to suppress you has now become evidence of who you are. You are not the one crumbling under pressure. You are the one pressure could not erase. Psalm 118 verse 22 declares, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone, and so your rejection becomes the foundation of your rising." You are not just surviving the battle. You are reclaiming what was always yours. So let this be engraved into your spirit. You were never opposed because of failure. You were opposed because of power. The shadows shook when you entered because your fire was already burning in silence. Their hostility was confession. Their rejection was recognition. And their attacks were proof that your light was undeniable. Every effort to block, you only refined your strength. Every attempt to silence, you only amplified your purpose. You are not cursed by opposition. You are crowned by it. Comment, "I move guarded by divine fire." If you know their resistance was the revelation of your authority, and stay close, because the next unveiling is not about trembling shadows. It is about the ignition of prophecy that can no longer be hidden. Number 3, the awakening of the fire. There comes a moment when chosen ones cannot stay hidden any longer. Jeremiah 20 verse 9 says, "His word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones." And you know that feeling because you've lived it. The fire in you has pressed, pushed, demanded its release, and now the appointed time is unfolding. They thought rejection would keep you small, but rejection became your ignition point. Every delay was sharpening. Every closed door was redirection. Every hidden year was alignment. Now, like a sealed prophecy bursting open, your calling refuses silence. Comment, "I rise marked by the divine." If you feel this ignition stirring within, and share your dream, your memory, your challenge, because your testimony of fire is already awakening others. And listen closely, because the witness of your life is about to speak louder than any word you've ever said. It begins suddenly, like a curtain pulled back after years of shadows, when you realize that nothing you endured was wasted. A memory resurfaces, one you dismissed before, but now it glows with new meaning as if stitched into your destiny long ago. A coincidence that felt random yesterday now feels like alignment, a code meant to guide your steps. It is as though your vision has sharpened overnight, and you see threads connecting across time and space. Questions that tormented you no longer carry the same weight, because clarity has begun to rise in their place. The confusion was never chaos. It was the veil preparing to lift at the right hour. And in this unveiling, you realize that what you carry has always been fire, waiting to ignite. You notice now that everything has been speaking to you in whispers, waiting for you to listen. Numbers repeat until you cannot ignore them. Dreams echo phrases you've never spoken. Silence hums with hidden scrolls of wisdom. You walk past a symbol, and suddenly your heart jolts, as if recognizing a language your mind does not fully know. Geometry becomes sacred, patterns carry meaning, and time itself bends to reveal its deeper rhythm. What was once ordinary now pulses with divine math, a sacred architecture hidden beneath daily life. Job 12 verse 22 tells us, "He reveals the deep things of darkness and brings utter darkness into the light." And you realize you've been decoding that mystery all along. Reality is no longer flat. It is layered, coded, alive with prophecy. Inside, something shifts even deeper, and you know it because you can feel it in your body. Your intuition sharpens like a blade, and suddenly the lies you once tolerated cannot stand near you. Your boundaries rise like walls of flame, not built in bitterness but in clarity, because you now know the value of what you carry. Your energy responds to rooms differently, sometimes expanding, sometimes withdrawing, always guided by an unseen intelligence. You sense atmospheres before words are spoken. You detect motives before masks fall, and you feel when something is off without needing explanation. This is not paranoia but perception, the sharpening of spiritual sight through years of silence and rejection. What they thought was weakness has turned into discernment, and you now move with the authority of awareness. As this awakening grows, the world around you begins to reflect the shift inside. People who once ignored you suddenly take notice, though they cannot explain why they feel unsettled in your presence. Opportunities appear where doors had always been locked, yet resistance also rises more fiercely than before. You realize that both are signs of alignment. Light attracts both favor and attack. Relationships shift, some fading into distance, while others emerge with divine timing. Carrying resonance your spirit immediately recognizes. Circumstances that once held you captive begin to break apart, revealing paths hidden beneath rubble. What is within you now echoes outside you, and divine architecture takes shape around your steps. In this sacred unfolding, you feel a memory rising that is older than your years. It is as if you are not learning something new, but remembering what was always yours, written in your being before you were born. A dream you carried as a child returns in sharper detail, no longer dismissed as fantasy, but understood as prophecy. You recall moments of déjà vu that now make sense, flashes of recognition when you met certain souls, whispers of ancient vows sealed long before time. This is sacred memory activating, the reawakening of spiritual intelligence that was never erased, only buried. Deuteronomy 29 verse 29 says, "The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us, and to our children forever." And you know revelation is now your inheritance. This remembrance is intimate, magnetic, impossible to deny, with truth unveiled. The future no longer feels like an empty canvas, but a script written in light. You are not inventing who you are. You are reclaiming what was hidden, retrieving the scrolls of your own destiny. You stop asking for permission to exist because you realize existence itself was your ordination. Prophecy becomes personal, not distant words on a page, but living fire within your bones. You begin to walk with a call rising from the inside, not needing validation, because the code has already been unlocked. This is not ambition, but alignment, not striving, but remembrance. And the voice that calls you forward is the same one that sustained you in silence. Now reclamation begins, and it feels less like gaining something new and more like recovering what was always yours. Every rejection that once crushed you now reads like confirmation of your fire. Every closed door you thought was punishment reveals itself as divine redirection. You remember the voice you silenced to fit in, and now you hear it roaring back with undeniable clarity. They tried to bury you, but they only planted you in soil meant for ignition. Their resistance became your refining. Their slander became your sharpening. Their silence became your preparation. And now, chosen one, you rise not with apology but with fire. So let this truth settle like a seal upon your soul. Revelation is not the conclusion. It is the invitation. The truth you've discovered was waiting all along for you to be ready. And now that readiness cannot be undone. The veil has lifted, the codes are visible, and the fire within you refuses to stay hidden. What once felt like survival now feels like destiny awakened. Your very life is prophecy in motion, a testimony no shadow can erase. Comment, I walk hidden yet never lost. If you know the fire is rising within you, and share the dream, memory, or moment that confirmed your awakening. Because what comes next is not just remembrance. It is the transformation of memory into legacy, and that story has only begun to burn. Number 4, when fire becomes witness. Survival was never the goal. Revelation was. Revelation 12 verse 11 says, "They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony." Your scars are no longer wounds. They are scriptures written on your body. Your survival has become proof, a living prophecy that chosen ones cannot be erased. Every valley became light. Every heartbreak became fire. Every silence became a crown. You no longer argue for your worth, because your existence is the testimony darkness cannot silence. They tried to bury you, but you burned, and now your life itself judges what was false. Comment, I anchor this truth in my soul. If you know survival has become your witness, and share the moment you realized your scars were no longer shame, but scripture. Because chosen one, your testimony is no longer private. It is heaven's announcement. There is a moment, chosen one, when silence no longer hides you, but begins to speak louder than any voice you ever had. You hear it first in the quiet, the ancient whisper that tells you your scars were never wasted. They were etched into your being as sacred ink. What once looked like random suffering suddenly glows with the weight of divine inscription, as if every tear wrote a hidden psalm across your soul. In dreams you see fragments of your journey stitched together, valleys turned into altars, wounds transformed into prophecy. Revelation does not come as noise, but as remembrance, a scroll unsealed in the chambers of your heart. Your survival begins to shift into testimony, and testimony becomes witness, a light that no shadow can smother. And in that revelation you understand, you were not meant to just endure, you were meant to reveal. This remembrance deepens when you recall the hidden name heaven gave you before the world tried to rename you with shame. You realize that the feeling of never belonging was not rejection, but preservation, guarding the part of you that was never meant to blend in. The identity buried beneath the noise of the world begins to stir, like a sealed scroll long forgotten, but never erased. Isaiah 62 verse 2 declares, "You shall be called by a new name that the mouth of the Lord will give." And that promise is no longer distant. It breathes through you now. Chosen one, Your silence was never empty. It was fire waiting for a command. Subscribe if you haven't yet, like this video, and comment, "I am chosen to let this message anchor in your soul." Until next time, remember, silence was not your defeat. It was your fire gathering for revelation.